Hi everyone, welcome again to my channel. Let's talk about sleep. Again, just want to let you know about my book called Let's Talk About Sleep, which is available on Amazon.com in a hardcover format as well as a electronic version by Roman and Littlefield. It's available for you guys to purchase. So if you're interested, please go take a look. Today we're going to talk about chronic insomnia and where it comes from and what is it and so on and so forth. The term insomnia means either difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, or sleep that's non-restorative. And we're going to focus today. So everybody has had acute insomnia. So that means like insomnia that occurs when you have a big test the next day or a big interview or what have you. Maybe the night before or a couple nights leading up to it, you may not sleep as well because your mind is racing, and that's that's natural, right? But chronic insomnia, this is defined as insomnia that occurs at least 3 months. Okay, so one of my great mentors, his name was Dr. Art Spielman. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. He came up in the 80s with this model for chronic insomnia known as the 3P model. Okay, and those 3Ps stand for predisposition, precipitating, and perpetuating. And this is the reason why chronic insomnia, we think, happens or is chronic. So the first P is predisposition. So people with insomnia will oftentimes have either a prior history of insomnia or a family history of insomnia, or a psychological predisposition. They may be anxious, anxiety, depression, those sorts of things. Okay? And that predisposition for insomnia remains where it is until the second P happens, which is precipitating. So something occurs that precipitates the insomnia. So, again, a big test, or, well, not necessarily a big test, but let's say maybe like a divorce or a death in the family or loss of a job, or it could even be some good things. It could just be, something emotionally powerful. That predisposition now kind of rears its head and comes to the surface. So now this person has a period of insomnia. They cannot sleep well. Now, the insomnia would abate or go away if it wasn't for the third P, which is perpetuating, and this is where sleep specialists come into play. So the third P is perpetuating. So what is that? That's spending too much time in bed. Okay, we tend to think if we have insomnia, I'll spend 12 hours in bed and that will help alleviate the problem. It doesn't work that way. The brain it gets conditioned. We're not much more advanced than Pavlov's dog. You guys know that, where Pavlov was this researcher in early 1900s, I believe, and he conditioned these dogs where every time he rang the dinner bell, they would salivate. We're operating on the same thing, where if we spend a lot of time in bed and are frustrated and can't fall asleep or wake up and can't get back to sleep, and we spend extra time in bed, what happens is the brain gets conditioned. This bed is not my place of sleep. This is my place of frustration. This is my place of being upset. This is my place of whatever, and the problem may continue. Again, perpetuating. Okay, so that's one thing, spending too much time in bed. The second thing could be things like doing things in bed that are not sleep promoting, i.e. watching TV in bed. That's a big one. Using your iPad or iPhone in bed. Reading on certain devices. Talking on the phone. Sometimes people eat in bed. Okay, these are things which, again, trick the brain into thinking, is this bed my place of sleep or is it something else? So what I tell people is, especially with the third P perpetuating, is you want to think of the bed and even the bedroom, if you can, as almost like a holy temple. And you don't want to desecrate that temple by doing anything in there that is not related to sleep and maybe sexual activity. But the other things that we mentioned, you really want to avoid doing that stuff in bed. Unfortunately, sometimes college students will have to do homework in bed or other things because there's just not enough room. But you really want to do the best you can to avoid doing these things in bed. people always ask me about reading. Reading before bed is okay. If you do that for, like, let's say 10 or 15 minutes as you're kind of getting tired and getting sleepy, as long as it's on paper, reading in bed shouldn't be a problem. But it gets into the problem when it becomes hours and hours and hours, and especially if you're reading on a device that has a backlit display. So, actually, to that point, I want to mention that backlit and what we call blue light devices. So everybody's heard that term, blue light device or backlit device. What that's implying is that anything that you can see with the lights out, the light that comes from that source has light in a specific frequency. What that does, we call it blue light, it tricks the brain to think that the sun is out. So what your brain is reading, or your brain is getting, is, oh, okay, the sun is coming into my eyes, therefore it means I should be awake right now. What happens is the melatonin production that normally would happen at nighttime to promote sleep cannot happen. So what you're doing is you're basically shutting off your body's mechanism to help promote sleep. Now, look, I mean, if you have really, really bad insomnia and you just eliminate TV before bed, sure, it could help. It may not be a miracle, but the way to treat insomnia is by doing several good things together, not just one little piece at a time. Okay? But the 3P model is really, it's a powerful understanding of how insomnia can occur and how it can keep going. And as I said, as a sleep specialist, that's one of the ways that we try to help people, is by, certainly medications can be of use, which we'll go over in another video, but in terms of behavioral changes, that's important as well. And the behavioral changes that we mentioned are something called sleep hygiene. Okay, that doesn't mean being clean in sleep. It means doing things in bed that are going to promote sleep. And we'll talk about that in a whole other video. We'll talk about medications in a whole other video. But I just want to briefly mention two things in the realm of behavioral changes. So one of those is called sleep restriction therapy. Okay, and basically what that's saying is, the way I explain this to patients is by using an extreme example. So let's say there's somebody who gets into bed at 8 p.m. and they just lie there. They may watch TV, they may be playing video games or talking on the phone or whatever, eating, whatever. And from, let's say, 3 or 4 hours go by, so around midnight or so, they fall asleep. Okay, and then they wake up every hour and have trouble falling back to sleep, and then they get out of bed at 8 a.m. So this person, this example, they're in bed from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., 12 hours, right? But because of the insomnia that they have, they're only sleeping, let's say, 6. So 12 hours in bed, 6 hours of sleep. What we'll do in that case is do what's called sleep restriction. So we'll take the time that they are allowed to spend in bed and cut it down. So in this case, I may have the person not even get into bed until, like, let's say 1 a.m. or so, and have them get out of bed no matter what by 7. Okay, so I'm cutting off a big chunk in the front and a little bit towards the end. Now, initially, they're going to be very hesitant to do that because they're already not sleeping enough. But what occurs, and we'll go over this in more detail in other videos, what occurs is you're using the body's natural desire to get consolidated or high-quality sleep, and you're using it to work with the patient. So that's sleep restriction, and you have to be careful with that because there are certain cases where doing that can promote, like in somebody who has bipolar disorder, can make the symptoms worse in some cases. The other is called stimulus control therapy, and what that is basically, if roughly 20 minutes or so has passed and the possibility of sleep is nowhere in sight, and okay, this is going to be one of those nights, you actually don't lie in bed. What you do is you get out of bed, you go to another area of your room or the house or the apartment or whatever, and you do something like meditation, which is one of my favorites, and that'll be another video. Or read on paper, or listen to music, or listen to a podcast, or whatever. Listen to my voice, until you feel sleepy. Until you feel tired again, your eyes start getting heavy, and you start getting drowsy. Then you get back into bed and try again. And you do that as many times as it takes until you fall asleep quickly. So that's stimulus control therapy. All of these, by the way, they fall under the umbrella of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, otherwise known as CBTI. Okay, so that's it. This video. If you guys like this video, please click like on the tab. Please subscribe to my channel. Please share it with your friends and family. Again, my book is out there. Please get it. Let's talk about sleep. And I'll see you next video.